There's one thing that's always amused me about Grappler Baki. You often hear about how muscular the characters are, how crazy the fights can get, and how insane the entire experience is to witness. And indeed, it is a glorious martial arts series, and the best shonen to make your testosterone jump through the roof. However, there is an aspect that's never really discussed. The fact that all the characters are natural. Yes, you've heard me right. Hanma, who's 365 pounds and 10% body fat at 15 years old, is natural. Baki, who looks like a pro wrestler when he's still a preteen, is natural. Orochi Doppo, who's in his 50s and would still put most pro bodybuilders to shame, is natural. Hanma Yujiro, the most shredded character of the series, who also happens to be the strongest creature on earth, is natural. The entire cast of Grappler Baki is 100% certified natty. Some might say that the author, Itagaki, just didn't bother to mention that his characters are on steroids. After all, this is a manga, and it's not like anyone cares whether or not fictional people are truly natural. There's also the fact that including and illustrating PEDUs in a magazine like Shonen Jump targeted towards young men could have some dire consequences for the author or his audience. Those are all valid counterpoints, and yet they're all wrong, because of one man, one character created by the author of Grappler Baki, who secures the idea that the rest of them have never touched drugs in their life. At first glance, he looks nice enough. With gentle eyes and a calm demeanor, he's a far shot from the rest of the barbarians that populate the Grappler Baki series. He even goes as far as to compliment Kozue for her beautiful eyes. And yet, 2 words from this seemingly normal man were all it took to send shivers of dread and anticipation down the hero's spine. So why this reaction by Baki? Why would someone who is usually calm and collected immediately challenge this man to a fight? What did he sense that is not obvious to us at first glance? Let me answer these 2 questions by another one. Have you ever met someone who looked innocuous at first, but who gave off a bad vibe? Someone who did not look threatening in the slightest, or did not harbor any visible signs of aggression, but still sent every alarm in your body into overdrive? This someone is Jack Hammer, the focus of this Morso Manga episode. He is also the only Grappler Baki character to do steroids, and he does a lot of them. Actually, Jack does all of the steroids. He is steroids. While the other fighters prepare before a bout by warming up and stretching their muscles, Jack has a different approach to pre-contest rituals altogether. His consists of going to the bathroom and injecting testosterone straight into his veins while staring angrily into the mirror. He follows that up by swallowing enough D-ball and anavar to turn an entire herd of bulls into elephants, and washes that down with a few vials of Trent for good measures. He doesn't take pre-workout or caffeine pills though. That would be bad for his health. By the time he makes it to the ring, his demeanor is calm, but his heartbeat isn't. Actually, it's pumping enough blood to power a small electric dam. The irony of the attendant telling them to get warmed up if needed when Jack's body temperature must be close to that of a volcano is not lost on me. It's lost on his opponent though, because he immediately attempts to take him down. Read the room, dude. This is a funeral. Your funeral. This is the face you make when you know you're going to turn your opponent into minced meat. Look at those jaw muscles. The guy can probably close the captain of crutch number 4 gripper with his teeth. Jack doesn't budge from the tackle and proceeds to break it using only one arm. Pushing a 200-pound man who has a secure hold around your waist with one hand only is already an inhuman feat of strength. But you'll see that for the man who calls himself Hammer, this is still in the realm of child's play. Speaking of Hammer, here's one straight to the jaw. And on that day, this man became the first Jiu-Jitsu black belt to make it to the moon without needing a space shuttle. This was Jack's first victim in the tournament, but certainly not the last, as his rampage extends even to those who are not his direct opponents. And since 2 fingers is all he needs to choke someone out, it's not like he's exerting himself much either. That being said, it's not like this was an act of gratuitous violence on his part. Besides his opponents, Jack scarcely brutalizes anyone besides the tournament's bathroom. No, in reality he had to get rid of that guy to get to fight Garland, a Russian monster, in his next match. The man has 2 passions in life: performance-enhancing drugs and beating up strong opponents, to the point that he's developed an almost disturbing love for muscle. But fear not, Jack's not the type to discriminate, and he also accepts men of smaller stature as his future homicides. At the end of the day, a corpse, big or tiny. At 6 feet 3, 255 pounds, Jack isn't the heaviest fighter of the tournament, nor the tallest, but he's the one with the best mix of muscle mass, leanness and frame. A man of this size is already a massive threat with his fists alone, but punches and kicks isn't what this psychopath here is all about. As the announcer says, Jack got something. That something is a weapon that allows him to take off massive chunks of flesh from his opponent's body in a flash. So fast in fact that no one in the audience, nor the judge or his adversary, could see its use clearly. And not only that, it's perfectly legal. The judges however don't know that and check Jack for illegal weapons, of which he possesses none of. If he had been more attentive during that mouth check however, that attendant would have been able to notice the pieces of flesh in between Jack's teeth and realize what had happened. Because yes, Jack's weapon is his teeth. As stupid as it sounds, a full bite from a giant jacked up on steroids with massively developed jaw muscle is enough to make you appreciate how tough it must be to exist as a steak. Jack's jaw is so strong that he can chew right through a coconut. Human flesh and bones must feel like butter to him. Not only is his bite sharp and quick, he can also easily hold his prey in his mouth and carry it around using the incredible power and stamina of his neck and upper back. Can you imagine the level of fear you would feel if you were confronted to that situation? For those who have never been beaten, it's tough to explain. There is an innate fear that comes with the idea that a part of you can be removed forever. Think of it as being threatened by someone with a knife. The very idea that this weapon can be used to penetrate your body or section a portion of it forever would be enough to liquefy your courage and encourage you to give up your wallet. This is why lots of people who've been bitten before are afraid of dogs, sometimes years after the fact. The fear is real. Now imagine that the dog weighs 250 pounds, has hands to grab you and open doors with, and is a foot taller than you. Jack is basically a bull shark with legs. He is also completely disconnected from the reality of what being a human is thanks to the potency of the drugs. Look at him shaking that poor monk around like a chew toy. Eventually, something's got to give. In this case, it was this guy's tendons and bones. Jack, who never runs out of serial killer grade ideas to spice up a fight, follows up by spitting parts of the guy into his face. Because you can never be too gory. Suffice to say, this fight didn't end well. That man thought he had entered a martial arts tournament. Turns out he was an extra for the next Chainsaw Massacre. Despite the fact that these moves fall perfectly within the rules of the underground tournament, a lot of fighters had something to say about this. It's true that no one wants to see some jiu-jitsu during what is supposed to be a contest of skill. Jack doesn't mind this vilification. The entire thing actually makes him laugh quite a bit. And in truth, can you blame him? All of these fights include people trying to beat and maim their opponents, killing them if necessary. So why would high gouging be acceptable but not biting? As Jack states, he's bringing the fangs back to fighting. Unfortunately for Garland, he would be the next one in line to experiment Jack's special approach to one-on-one combat. At this point of the episode, you might think that this Hammer guy just appears to be some deranged roidhead with a passion for human dog fights. You might also be wondering why I keep calling him Jack Hammer when the title of the video clearly stipulates that his name is Hanma. But one thing at a time. First off, let's state the obvious. Yes, Jack's strength is due to steroids. And yes, his fighting style makes him look more like a wild beast than an actual human. But these two aspects of his character end up making a lot of sense when you consider who he truly is. And thinking that all there is to this man's combatability is PED-induced power and sharp teeth would be a gross misunderstanding of his true nature. He's not your average steroid user. Regardless of the amount he takes, the response his body provides shouldn't be possible. Within weeks of starting his use, he was already beating world records in the 100, 200 and 400 meter dash without having ever trained for it. He was also easily able to beat world records in powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting, although that bar does look like it's only holding 315 pounds. They must be special Grappler Baki plates, weighing 100 kilos each. Considering he's able to throw a 170 kilo man across a room with only one arm, I don't think those are fake plates. But all of that is worthless to him. Strength and speed were not meant to be showcased in a stadium or on a platform. They are tools of domination to be used in combat. While most people who have the opportunity to become a phenom at a recognized sport would jump at the occasion, Jack had only one thing in mind: fighting. And fighting he did, rampaging through gyms like a fox in a henhouse. Something tells me that the concept of light sparring is entirely foreign to Jack. He's not stopping until you're vomiting blood. That same reality applies to the tournament. He's simply utilizing the weapons he nurtured to accomplish his goal. And the fiery determination that emanates from his face as he obliterates his opponents tells you that this is not going to be a simple wish to become the best fighter in the world. There is something much darker and sinister at play here. This malevolence transpires through each one of Jack's victory, as his opponents get destroyed in the most violent of fashions. Each one is a triumph, basically a Mortal Kombat fatality. Here, it takes Garland's out by breaking his ribs and impaling his heart with it. We also learn in passing that he, like many top-level fighters, wishes to fight against Yujiro. This makes sense, seeing as how he's the strongest creature on Earth, and an evident goal for anyone who wants to prove themselves. However, the fact that he was able to get close enough to murmur something to him, instead of outright challenging him for a fight, shows that there is a deeper mystery behind this. This can be explained by the fact that Jack was produced after the model of Yujiro, who was used as the archetypal idea of the superhuman by a scientist who witnessed him beating up a polar bear without weapons and got obsessed with the idea of replicating such a monster with man-made drugs. The result, however, exceeded his craziest expectations. Jack got bigger and stronger at an alarming rate. He was soon able to move weights that should be impossible even for enhanced humans, like deadlifting 500 pounds while pulling the barbell with his mouth. That neck power allows Jack to tank punches that would put any other fighter into a deep coma. Walking like a fifth limb, it also helps him to quickly extend and retract his head to take a bite out of his opponents, or send wall-shattering headbutts into the face of anyone foolish enough to stand before him. It is so thick and resistant that it can even help him resist a rear naked choke, a submission move that is considered to be absolutely unstoppable once the hold is established. Considering that Jack used to be some bean sprout with no muscle mass, this is impressive. A little bit too impressive even. That progression didn't only stem from the drugs, it was also born from an indomitable spirit, one who refuses to rest or accept pain as a limiting factor. One who has no care for tomorrow and only seeks to be stronger today. The issue, however, is that this thirst for strength never slowed down. If anything, it got madder, like an itch that bothers you the more you scratch it. And boy did Jack scratch it. In pursuit of the ultimate weapon of destruction, he pushed what used to be a skinny and muscleless body into an abominable vessel of annihilation, destroying himself in the process. The scientists who had remarked him and put him on that heavy drug regimen, aware of the unstoppable creature he had helped birth, blew his brains out as a show of repentance for his actions. By trying his hardest to create superhumans, he had ushered in the most powerful supervillain of all times, one so mighty that an adult polar bear weighing 500 pounds doesn't even represent a challenge to him. In terms of musculature, it's tough to find a single weak point. Promoted by the heavy drug use, the hypertrophy of the muscles is on full blast, the most noteworthy muscle groups being the arms, the legs, and the neck. When he turns around, the eye immediately goes to his upper back, which looks to be sculpted out of solid rocks. The traps especially look ridiculous, like two crescent moons on each part of his spine. This is also the part of his body that responds the most aggressively to his pre-match steroid ritual. A bag that swells up during combat. I wonder who that reminds me of. This absolute physical domination is so resounding that it sends shockwaves throughout the universe of Grappler Baki, perceivable by dudes like Gookie here, who can sense threats on an almost physical level. And to him, the danger that Jack represents materializes as a giant locked door that seems to say, anything that you find beyond me will bring to you nothing but pain and despair. Unfortunately, that warning turned out to be accurate, as the fight against Jack goes off the rails immediately. No amount of punishment can take him down. Even stepping directly on his face is not enough to KO him. Like a relentless zombie, he keeps immediately getting up to continue his attacks. With his strength, bites, and tankiness, Jack proves to be a nightmare opponent for every fighter. Speaking of bites, Jack always makes sure to leave a little present to those who decide to use his face as a doormat. Now add to that the fact that Jack has the speed of an Olympic sprinter and you got a perfect mix. No one can escape Jack. No one can outclass Jack. No one can match Jack's strength. In any given fight, there will come a time where the opponent is tired and lowers his guard. and at that very moment, they will feel teeth sinking into their flesh. Now, you must think that he might still have a flaw. He could be stupid. Unfortunately, Jack is as cunning as it comes, as demonstrated when he completely nullifies Gooky's Aikido by voluntarily slowing down his attack, then slamming his fist under his chin after immobilizing him with a bite. Jack also showcases his incredible ability to master a technique by replicating a high-level throw only minutes after having witnessed it for the first time, something that only Baki and Yujiro have been shown to be able to do so far in the story. And of course, there is this complete absence of pity that allows him to finish his opponents with vicious blows the second they touch the floor. Jack is the complete package. In terms of spirit, he is a man on a mission. He doesn't care if people agree with his methods or not. Nothing in the rules stipulates that using steroids or biting is forbidden. So you know what? He'll use both. And if people try to get in his way, he will simply crush them, like he does to Dr. Korea here, who is one of the most muscular and proficient fighter in the series in terms of raw strength. Even with all his heavy pre-fight doses of drugs, his base state is enough to beat those who would be considered superhuman. He has transcended the original ideal of a godlike body and reached the status of monster, exemplified by his battle against the polar bear. The poor beast did not want to fight Jack. One glance at him told it that it was not a prey. This was a hunter, and one that it had absolutely no chance of defeating. One that would hurt it for sport. One that sported the grin of a demon. Running for its life, the animal knows it cannot escape. Jack is on its tail. Using only one arm, he raises the 500 pounds mass of muscles and fur and sends it flying into the skies with a stratospherically powerful uppercut. What follows is an expression of the most unbridled violence, with the bear being turned into a pile of blood and gore. Jack has proved that the drug regimen and training have turned him into a being that should be able to rival Yujiro in a fight. Having turned himself into a human lion, he is dedicated body and soul to this one goal. His spirit, lit up by the adrenaline, has turned predatorial. His body, soaking in the drugs, has taken the aspect of a machine of muscles and nerves whose only purpose is to maim and kill. Even his fighting style reflects his new identity, that of a beast. But why? Why this insane dedication towards one day being able to face and defeat Yujiro? Surely this cannot just be to prove his worth as a fighter, to himself or others, as this would have been way too rash a method. Jack has given up everything to get there, even his future. What could be the reason for that obsession? Well, as the title indicates, this is because Jack is Yujiro's son. Just like Baki, he is the fruit of the union between his mother and the one known as the strongest creature on Earth. But unlike Baki, who already didn't have the peachiest of childhoods, his was even worse. Raped by his father, his mother, Jane Hanma, had to give birth in prison. His life, as Jack states, was cursed from the beginning. Growing up in poverty and loneliness, his only redemption would be to be able to beat his fighter in a fight. And if that cost him his life, so be it. It never had any value or meaning in the first place. Jack reveals this shocking truth during his final match against Baki. On his faces are reflected the bitter emotions of abandonment, determination and fury he experiences as he fights his brother to finally win the right to challenge Yujiro in a fight. His past, present and future are laid bare with the conclusion of that clash. But that will be for another episode of Muscle Manga.